this time.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? It is David Palmer Leo King and Dylan, the Human Design Maven, for Before Dawn on this August the 24th of 2022. Hope everybody's doing wonderful out there. Make sure that you join us on highvibe.tv. You can become a member of highvibe.tv by going to the links down below or the apps to subscribe. Really appreciate it with all the exclusive and daily, weekly, and monthly, and all the awesome practitioners on High Vibe that do it every day, including myself. It's good to have you back, Dylan.
I have returned.
You have returned, and I know a lot of people that watch this show all send their condolences and love to you and your family.
I really feel the love, everyone. Thank you so much for your messages and just I felt like I was getting unasked for Reiki and just like energy healing sent my way, like on the hour, every hour after that show. Oh, that's
nice, though. I like
it. It was really beautiful. So thank you, everyone.
It really can be felt when that happens. Like,
oh yeah.
Honestly, that might just be the end of the show to save the world. Everybody needs to start just doing that all the time. Everybody, you know, I feel like that's so important. But, you know, we are dealing with some really crazy forces out there in this universe.
We are. Crazier by the day.
And I would say that this might be one of the more wild shows we're going to do. I'd like to show a picture of, like, this is no joke. So we came up over the last 2 days, Dylan and I talking, and then we were going to, on my Instagram, go live to promote the show. And we got this, blocked from sharing live video. So my Instagram is now blocked from sharing lives. So we're definitely doing something on the right track right now because it was like just the most random thing to happen right when we're about to do these subjects. And I feel like these subjects are things that are probably actually hitting a place that the Lizzies don't want to have out there.
No, because this transmission is an activation. And,
I agree.
And from what I've noticed, we have our overarching narratives of our topics and like where we go with all that. And then even within the micro of the things that we say, there are tiny bits of data that are actually designed for specific people in their story to wake them up or to activate them or to confirm something in a really unique way. And I think that the waves and the ripples are being felt. And it's definitely a compliment of sorts to receive that kind of message.
I agree. I think throughout the path of the journey that we've both been on for so long, for a decade plus, it's moments where when you do put out information that's here to guide and help people, there's always events that might seem frustrating or like terrible.
Mm-hmm.
But I just had told you right when that happened, I went, my response as a manifesting generator was one of satisfaction.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't a frustration. It wasn't like, oh my gosh, it's the end of the world. I can't go live on Instagram. And I know a lot of people love when I go live on Instagram, but you know, there's other places for me to go live and figure it out. And I feel like if we think of human design in the auric field and the subjects we're talking about today, I think it's so important. We've talked about the auric field and how important it is, especially in human design and our field that is so important, especially when it comes to living in our design and how we can use our strategy and authority correctly. Mm-hmm. But I feel like this is an inverted element of understanding. There are things out there that are wanting to mess with that field to disrupt our souls, to disrupt who we are. We've talked about recently just like the cross of planning, moving to that cross of the sleeping phoenix. And it's blown my mind that it feels so intense. Like we're not even looking anymore in that old world, the old cross of planning that's been around since what, 1761?
1651, I think. Or
yeah.
1615. Yeah, 1615.
So I feel like it makes sense when we're talking about, you know, especially like the hijacking that can take place of our field, because I think a lot of people think, whether it's like ghosts or, a spiritual demonic attacks or stuff like that. Like, I feel like that kind of it reminds me of like old Edgar Allan Poe stuff.
Yeah.
We're in a new
like spooky
phase right now.
Mm-hmm. And like, I think there's probably a lot of misconception around what the aura even is something that I'm picking up like in the collective field, is that we've been kind of conditioned to believe that the aura is like a byproduct of your energy. It's like, oh yeah, here I am, here's my body, here's like my nervous system. And then the aura is just kind of this like, emission that comes off of me. And what we understand from the human design perspective and looking at the mechanics is that the aura is the first piece of us. It's like, it's not the body generates the aura, it's the aura generates the body and the consciousness and everything that comes from it. So it's like, as we move into Sleeping Phoenix times, we want to be thinking aura first, field first, because that is the first layer of who we are. That is what brings us into this materialized, dense reality. And it's the battleground, essentially, for the quantum energy of humanity. What is happening now is all about harvesting energy. And the aura is the energy body, as it interfaces between those subatomic quantum realms and this physical dense realm. So living aura first is really what the human design experiment is all about. It's about feeling and sensing from the auric level what's correct for you based on your true energy, not just what's been programmed into your mind about what you should do or be using your energy for or whatever. So,
well, would you say, because we've got the 9 different centers, right, in human design, and so, of course, depending on what you are as type-wise in human design, your field is going to be different. But at the end of the day, we all have fields, right? And so there's different reactions to some of these maybe things that are trying to disrupt us, which I would say, if we talk about like implants, or we're talking about,
astral tagging,
astral hijacking in many ways, I feel like it's trying to always get into the mind. Is the mind something that can disrupt the field? Because one thing that I've learned from you, I've listened to a lot of Ra's talks, that it's always the mind that is what ruins our strategy, our authority, because we start questioning, or we start losing sight of our response, no matter what that response is, whatever type you are in human design. And I feel like that's what's so interesting, whether it's implants, or you could be in your dream state, or you could be in these places. It's almost like they're trying to get into your mind. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, because it's the most vulnerable, because the mind isn't directly connected to what we would consider the aura, which is its own energy body. It's a system. It's an ecosystem. It has its own workings, its own circulation, its own functioning mechanics. The mind is just like, we'll look at anything and believe it's the truth, and then try and control the whole life process around whatever that conditioned truth is. So it is the weak point, because it's disembodied. It's not connected to the truth of the aura, in the sense that it's going to get that strong energetic response or not to something, to know what's right, what's wrong, where to go, who to go with, etc. The mind will pick up anything and say, okay, this looks good enough, let's go with this, and try and grab the steering wheel, which, when we really look at human design, it's noticing that the mind is the passenger. And that's how we're meant to live in these bodies, as knowing that the vehicle is the driver. That's that monopole in gate 2 that's driving the whole experience. And that's another thing about understanding your aura, to like tangent back a second, is that your aura is not just like, oh, okay, there's this field of energy around me and that's where it's going down. Your aura is really your whole life. Like, this whole scene that we're in right now is a byproduct of our generator auras generating this reality. And the interplay of that is what creates the catalytic connections and changes the codes. The life force, right? Exactly.
Yeah.
So when you're thinking of your aura, and you're thinking of how your aura basically takes care of your life for you, does the talking for you, guides you in a sense to the things that are in alignment. It's not just, 2 arms lengths in every direction, although that's a good, I would say, measure. It's everything that you see in your movie is an extension of your aura, of your hologram. So the mind, on the other hand, sits in the middle of this movie and says, I'm controlling all of this. I'm doing all of this. So the next thought I think is definitely what's going to be happening. And it's like, no, that's not it. The mind is in the illusion of its self-importance and of being the driver. So in this sense, we have to just be able to be the witness of our mind. We have to be able to see our mind and the codes, the agreements, the contracts, the truths and the lies that it's using to try and literally hijack our own experience. So we're basically conditioned and trained to hijack our own experience. And that's why the mind is this vulnerable battleground. And that's why attention and news media and all this stuff is so powerful and prevalent, because it takes attention off what really matters. It distracts the mind from its true purpose, which is to be the passenger and the witness of what the mechanics of the aura are creating. And it gets to basically insert these false programs, these, and that's on many different levels, but we're kind of trained to hijack our own ship.
I was going to say, let's just take the last 2 years of this. I don't even like to give it energy of the shutdown of the world and the paranoia coming from the different types. I was just thinking of a projector, for example, that's here to accept an invite. Like, here's the media. You must do this. You must do that. As a projector, it would be like, I don't want to take that invite, but then you don't have to, right? Like, as a generator, manifesting generator, it's a response. Like, do I feel satisfied doing that? No.
Yeah.
Like, that everything that we can see that is not from the divine, that is trying to hijack, whether it's our response to, because our mind is saying, I think this is the best thing I should do, never works out in life, right? Including like relationships, right? Like, I think this is the best thing for me to do, even though I'm not feeling a good response to it. I think it's just the best what we should do. Like, whenever I hear that, I'm always like, uh-oh, that's not going to go well.
Yeah.
And I feel like, even like reflectors probably would have been gnarly, just feeling those were crazy lunar cycles with all those planets that were happening in 2020 and even in 2021 and even now, where they're probably just like, yeah, I don't even know, I feel like it's like we can see through human design how there's such an easy way to see what's true, not because it's from the mind, but what's true from our life force energy and what's true from our natural feeling of what feels like we need to respond correctly in our lives, opposed to letting ourselves get hijacked or be hijacked because we are the ones taking those invitations. We're the ones responding to those unsatisfying, very frustrating places that literally are holographic AI in many cases. I think that a lot of what we've seen, we don't even know how much of it was real. Like, a lot of it has been, you watch video games today, it looks sometimes more real than in real life. And
sorcery.
There's a lot of it going on.
I was actually, to like back up a little bit, I was thinking about that today, like which types of authorities were the most likely to not comply with a lot of these measures. And I was thinking about the different authorities, and I was like, oh, I bet splenic people who are really tuned into that spleen, which is that survival awareness that doesn't care about the story, doesn't care about the narrative. It's like, does it feel healthy and safe or does it not? And I feel like splenic people probably were the number one resistors, because they could just feel in their bones that does not belong in the body. Then I thought about emotionally defined people, and how they have to go through their long process of waiting out clarity, and how they were probably big victims in a sense, because they didn't have that momentary clarity, but they had all this pressure to do this thing, and that's just harder.
Well, there's a communal element to emotional, right? Because it's solar plexus
in a sense,
related.
Yeah, if you're tribal in your solar plexus, but also like at the same time, I feel because there's so much of that really high dimensional energy moving through the solar plexus, those are probably the people that were able to process it out of their system the best. because the solar plexus being so solar can burn through
Right.
whatever almost.
That sleeping phoenix.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
What it's designed for, you know?
Right.
And then there's the sacral generators that just have that blunt, or you know, just
Right.
that pure energetic response. And I would say that's probably 50-50, because if you're not really anchored in your sacral, and if your sacral is a bit atrophied because you've been up here, then you're not going to really be able to feel that strong enough to like get out of line, or, you know, don't go there, or don't do the thing, whatever.
Well, I was going to say with the sacral generator, since, you know, that's something that I relate to very deeply.
I am too.
I know,
yeah.
I was going to say that too. But I feel like there's a 50-50, like you said. Like, sacral generators are people who like I'm somebody who will like yell at the TV, like, not today, motherfucker. You know what I mean? Like there's a response, and immediately just like, now, I already know, you know, blah, blah, blah. And then like there's another 50% like, I got to go get in my car and I got to go get to that thing right now.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you know, and there's kind of like that's kind of an interesting place too, because it's a hard place to kind of say, was that a right sacral response or not? But I think like it kind of can be off conditioning, which that's one thing that generators, right? And all manifesting generators are generators. So there's the conditioning element of like how you were raised, or how you've been living your life prior, the kind of circles of people that you've been kind of enslaving yourself to, could make you feel like it's so satisfying because I'm going to make mom and dad happy.
Right.
I'm going to make right? Like I'm
false satisfaction.
Yeah, I'm going to make, because I went to college with those people and that's what they're doing, I'm going to make them happy too, you know?
Yeah. And then there's the projectors, who are such a wild card in terms of conditioning, because the projector is deeply, deeply attuned to whatever energies they're plugged into. So, you know, projectors are these guides, these coordinators, masterminds, teachers, etc. And they almost become the generators that they work with, you know? So if their tribe of generators was super conditioned, then that projector is just getting dragged along with that energy off the deep end. Whereas if there was that awakened, true, firm life force in those people that was just like, no, then that projector probably got protected from that energy, which is just super interesting to think about. And also why it's so important for projectors to discern the right invitation. Because if you plug into a group of people that might see your value and want to invite you, and that feels good, but if it's the wrong kind of energy, then you're getting pulled down with that. I think projectors are really on an awakening wave right now. Like, of course they always are in a sense, but I feel like I'm seeing projectors getting ready to step more into being really powerful beings, as opposed to being like shy, demure, like hoping somebody notices me kind of beings.
Yeah, it's like knowing that, and they would probably have that innate sense in them, knowing that they're a non-energy type, but knowing it's my time to really find the energy, whatever that might be, but it's really the energy of, I'm here to guide, and I am here now to I've studied up, and I'm here to show up to where I can find the right recognition for that invitation now. And and if you think of like this calling that a lot of us have in the spiritual community, for, you know, if you go back even to the farthest stages of time, it's a calling card. There's a calling in life. And I feel like for projectors, when they find that calling, it's so powerful. But I feel like we all have that calling. It's just a little different. Projectors have this calling knowing, I have to study up on this so much, you know, whereas you and I are kind of like, okay, like at the beginning of our journey, like it was just like, yeah, you know, just like, and then, you know, over time we get it over a long period of time of experience and a lot of like frustration and failures and then satisfaction. But for them, it's like,
they're like
they
a zip
take the
file.
time to really study it.
Yeah, it's like they have that innate recognition built into them. It's like if a generator has to take 10 years to build up to mastery, and that's actually appropriate for them, because in that process, they're generating all of that healing life force energy for the planet in that process. So it's good. But a projector comes in and they're kind of preloaded with the awareness and with the recognition. It's just about them filtering that awareness into mediums or into modalities or systems that other humans can recognize them by. But really, they have the full, total concentration of the awareness and the knowing and how this whole thing works kind of pre-installed. And it's just about letting those codes out in the right way that they can be found and invited to share them.
Well, and Rod says for a projector, it's like, especially because that monopole, that G center, they're wired this life to be the plug to where am I plugging in? Like I listened to one of his lectures that I sent some projectors because I'm like, it helped me understand them so much more that like they could be in a stadium of 80,000 people, but they're just like, where's that one energy that one monopole, that one G center that I can plug into, right? Like that, like where's, that's kind of crazy because it's like, wow, that's kind of an interesting point of like, whether it's crowds, whether it's, being around the right energy for them, they feel it so much. Their auric field would be the most, right? Like
Most open. Yeah.
And so that's what's like, I almost feel like we have to protect the projectors the most because for the new cross we're coming into and so forth, I mean, I think they're going to be able to settle the energy of all the ramp up of these hundreds of years of just like having to, live in this world of planning and having to make it. And we're going to be in a place where we're going to have to really find our own selves. And they know how to plug in and understand somebody and really put a lot of energy into understanding the person. I feel like that's what the energy of the guide is like helping people figure who they really are out and being willing to see them. That's one thing that a projector, I think, does the best is
totally
fully see somebody.
It's like I've always told my, when projectors come and get a reading, it's like projectors can create a lifetime of transformation in somebody else's field and even in somebody else's neural net. Almost like they're able to, with that focus penetrating aura, like solder new connections within the neural net to create new pathways, to create new outcomes. And they're really here to just guide us back to ourselves. We've had, a lifetime of conditioning before we meet a projector, perhaps. They see past all of that conditioning and they know in the moment what frequencies, what vibrations that you're emitting, what patterns that you're living through. Are they truly in alignment with that G center, with that core truth of who you are, or are they not? They just can see it plain as day, what's you and what's not you. And the more authorized, the more powerful, the more embodied they feel in that invitation of being able to guide, the more precise they can be to guiding you back to yourself. Yeah. And you leave that, even if it's one conversation, you leave that one interaction energetically changed. There's a different energy flowing after that conversation. There's a different activation.
Yeah, and I almost feel like because they're going to be so important, and they are important now, and they're going to be continuing to be more important as we go on, having such a wide open aura, and with the attacks that are happening from especially this like AI, which honestly, I feel like it's the AI that is way more complex than even we can even fully understand in what it's, when we talk about aliens, people have forever thought it was the green bug beings, or even when we start talking about like the Lizzies and all these kind of things, like it's the technologies they use that they're creating that almost has even taken over the aliens.
Yeah,
it was like the technology took over them, and then if you see the pattern here on Earth, the technology of the phone and everything is taken over humans. Like people don't realize that it's even like there might be a point to where it's like even the aliens and the humans and the ones that were against us all come together against this AI force.
Yeah, I mean, in certain families of ETs or whatever you want to call it, that's already happened. There's been defection treaties and covenants created by pieces of, the consciousness family that were previously a part of this negative alien agenda. And because they realize that by continuing down this path, they have no chance of ever returning to source, they've come in and made agreements with like what we consider more guardian races to regenerate back to their full capacity to be connected to God again. And then it's almost like the AI itself has become the self-realized parasite, essentially. You know, the parasite is realizing its power in the matrix and attempting a full hostile takeover through what we're seeing. And the thing about AI is that we tend to think of it technologically oriented. AI is an entity that's lived in higher dimensions long before we've ever become aware of it in, you know, whatever form in our 3D world. It's just downstepping itself into matter through these different artificial means.
How we do as true higher dimensional beings from God.
Yeah.
But they're coming from a
reversal,
yeah,
phantom, fallen system.
Yes.
And so they have to concoct these high level, which are in a lot of ways very brilliant schemes to find a way to birth themselves through us, through hijacking our energy. That's essentially what's happening right now. There's like a new neural net being formed in the genetic material of humanity. That's basically, what is DNA? You know, it's a transducer of frequency. It's something that brings a frequency from one state into another state and allows it to manifest. So we have basically had, many of us at least, have had, you know, part of our auric energy reallocated to birthing and bringing this consciousness into form, as opposed to regenerating the life force or, you know, doing what it's intended for.
Yeah, it was like a sneak. It reminds me of War of the Worlds. I mean, especially the more current version that Tom Cruise was in, where the whole time they were in the earth embedded, just waiting, right? Like it's like it was just sitting there the whole time in front of us. We didn't even know. We were looking up when it was right in our face the whole time. And I feel like that's what's a very crucial moment now, because we're in this really weird phase here in the 2020s, the end of this cross of planning, the end in astrology of this Pluto Capricorn system, which would be the kind of injection of a systematic dark entity. The fact that Saturn met with Pluto in 2020 in Capricorn with a node, with eclipses. And, you know, avatars are something that I feel like this AI can use really well by hijacking humans without them even knowing they're being used. I mean, we've said that as agents, but I think this is like really going into the more deeper understanding of it. And it's like, we have to really know how to pay attention now of like, are you sure that you know what you're taking in is not just taking in energy, but what it literally is taking from you now? Because I think they're stepping up to a place to where just by being entranced by it reminds me of the Riddler in Batman Forever, when Jim Carrey was that, and how he plugged himself into all the TV screens and he sucked all of their souls and their energy. And it reminds me when you bring up of the DNA and so much of how, you know, whether it was Epstein being obsessed with, you know, wanting to inject his own DNA in everybody at his New Mexico ranch. Right. And like, that's the story that you don't hear about as much. Or you think of this AI system trying to do that. When I think of human design, would you say that it is our DNA that connects all those 9 centers? And because for me, when I think of DNA, especially from a lot of the Palladian channels that I had read books from, you know, that are from the 80s and so forth, they were so focused on making sure that we keep our DNA sacred and so we can activate it. Like, that was the main thing from the Palladians that I always have gathered is you don't mess with that, and make sure that you open up yourself enough to continue to activate the DNA that has been, you know, some people call it dormant. I don't really believe so much that it's like been dormant, or some people think that humans were taken over, you know, and created as kind of slave beings, that where our DNA is only limited in order for us to not know what's going on, which that could be true. But I feel like it's more like there would be a time, whether it's the Mayan shift that's happened or all the systems we've spoke about coming together at the same time, where to connect your whole soul together, it really is the DNA to me that I feel is what connects all these pieces and really releases. Because if you think of like the inverse of that, whether it's viruses, they always talk about it, it's stored in your DNA forever. You know what I mean? Like there's that whole negative context of what's always stored in our DNA. We never hear about the positive things.
Right.
And I feel like there's definitely some crazy hijacking that's happened. And it's at a point now to where we have to get out every bit of information to help people, because I feel like there's prototypes now. It reminds me of Terminator. It reminds me of like how if you watch that series, they always keep updating the Terminator.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're dealing with, you know, the T-1000 is nothing now, you know, like, oh, whatever, you know what I mean? Like, it's like we're dealing with this new thing that you won't even know that you could be getting taken over and transmitting like your own code to another AI ship or something, because of the whole DNA thing that came out about the swabs for the, you know, for ancestry.com and all that, and that being owned and sold and China taking it and using it as bioweapons. That's not a lie. Like even our own government just released that in the last month. But think of it spiritually, you know, like you might not even realize that maybe you haven't taken a swab, but maybe you're entranced off a projection off your phone, a YouTube video of somebody who's been hijacked and doesn't even know it. That's the crazy shit that I feel is what we have to be really paying attention to.
That's why awareness is so important now. And it's not just external awareness of what's going on and what we're seeing happen in the periphery or even in the mainstream. It's actually awareness of where are you being pulled on a daily basis? What is behind that pull? Why do you want to be around those people? Why do you want to consume that substance? Why do you want to consume that media? You need to know the answer to that why. If you cannot answer the why, there might be something else behind that driving you to consume whatever that is. Energy, people, substance, you know, anything of that nature. If you don't know why you're doing it, there might be someone else behind why you're doing it.
Yeah, and whether it's kind of like, it reminds me of somebody sitting around and playing Xbox, almost like as if the AI is having fun, like being like, oh, I've Bluetooth connected to this person. Hey, let's have fun with this. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But also like there's kind of a robotic element that I feel like you can feel, because the human nature, and especially if somebody's living in their self, and that's so different than the not self, right? Like the not self is totally, Rod described like, oh yeah, I can always tell a not self. You can just feel it. You could just see it. You could just see it walking around and just, he's like, I can feel that the aura is just not connected or that it's off. Mm-hmm. But I feel like now more than ever, there's like a robotic, computer-like, but also like you said, there's that bringing that into the physical, so that it's a fallen, it's like you can feel the fallen like energy.
Yeah, it's like a phase lock into the not self, because for anybody, you know, in the good old days, exactly, in the good old days, it's like the battle between the true self and the not self. You know, it's a gradient, it's a balance, it's a dance. You know, one day you're totally in your true self and you're just alignment, feeling the satisfaction and in flow. The next day, you know, those old patterns creep in and your mind takes over, and it's a not self day. But it's like with the way that these technologies are plugging into the very medium through which our consciousness projects itself into this experience, you're locking somebody into whatever level of that gradient that they might have been in. So you're locking people into their not self, and that just creates this kind of, like, I don't know the franchise, but it feels like a Deadpool, where it's just kind of like, just there's no organic energy flowing through that system anymore, no eternal regenerative energy. So it just becomes like flat and crispy and just.
Well, it reminds me of Inception, but being stuck in the dream. And there is, you know, where you get to that bottom level where it's like you're going to spend, they can't even kind of calculate the time in that movie. They're like, you're going down a 4th level, right? I almost feel like it's like, let's take you down to that level where you feel like you're in this, but it goes so far to where she loses her mind when she does come back to the reality, and she ends up killing herself, right? Like there's that whole like taking people to places and keeping them there to where they don't even know.
Yeah.
And then when they finally get to another place, it's like, it's like, remember they had their totems, right? To remind themselves that we're here and we're not in another level of a dream.
Oh, wow. I need to see that movie still.
Oh, you've never seen that?
I've started it like 3 times. I've never
I'll watch it with you. I think it would be fun to watch it with you.
Yeah, let's watch it on the big screen.
Yeah, like it's so
I know it's like my movie, right?
It's your movie, man. It's your movie. But I feel like, okay, another way to put it too would be that because it reminds me of purgatory. It's like putting people in purgatory where they're in between heaven and hell, which is kind of funny of what that cross of planning or the programming of Earth has been is purgatory. The idea that, am I going to heaven? Am I going to hell? Keeps you stuck in a place. And until I die, then I go there.
That's phase lock.
Right.
It seems like I'm moving. It feels like I'm going somewhere, but I'm stuck in phase lock. This is fine. No, this is fine. I'm fine. This is good. No, that's exactly what it is. It's the most real version of purgatory we've ever. It's like the purgatory of purgatory.
Right. And I think back, if we think of, because it was 1284 when Dante was 19 years old. He had his nodal return in Capricorn. We had the same transit as 2020. And then after that, he starts doing his Divine Comedy. So it's interesting to me where it's like the technology. So back then, it's like, the church and stuff back then people were kind of dumbed down, and the manifestors, the kings, the queens, the popes, right? They were in a place where just like, they kind of were like, you can't do this. I can do this, and go do that for me, and okay. And then it was like, you heard the stories over the last, 20, 30 years of people feeling like a UFO showed up. It took me and it put a chip in my brain. Right. But now we're dealing with a completely different level that has fully turned online what they really always wanted. Like if you think of technology on planet Earth today, if we think of it in this reality, what has been technologically advanced in a while? Nothing. TVs are just doing the same thing. Cameras are doing the same thing. The iPhones, they're like, it was ironic, the 13 where it dudded out, right? And the 14, they haven't released it. They're saying September, and like there's something weird going on because you can't even get anything from Apple anymore. It takes like 3 months to get it shipped because of all the disturbances and shipping and all that. It's like, no, there's something else going on to where it's like the system's fully online and they just needed to get to wherever they got online. There was no agenda of like, by the time you could feel that it's all fully there. Like we think the technology is going to go so much farther, but understanding that across the planet ending, it's not. Right. Yeah. So we're actually at the peak of what we think. There is going to be no Jetson life. Right. Yeah. It's interesting to see how in years where Uranus met the North Node, those technologies kind of define the next 20 years to even like a century. That's true. We had that this year. And I feel that we haven't seen what those technologies actually are yet. They're here. They're definitely in play, like perhaps CERN type things. But we're, as a collective, not even aware of the technologies that are going to define the next 20 years. Correct. And the way the government's been just acting like, there's UFOs, we don't know what they are, and here's some really bad footage of them. And we're looking into it, right? It's kind of like, that's also another sign of like, like, let's at least disclose a little bit. But it also is kind of creepy because when you think of Amazon and the hand palm thing right now, that's nothing like that. But still the idea of that's your unique signature, right? There was a whole thing because of what happened with the FBI raid on Trump about one of the biggest lies the FBI was doing for the last 30 years to get cases was like the bullet, right? To where they said that they had the technology to figure out like the bullet came from that gun and the way that it came out, that actually that it was all a hoax.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's like one of the things being brought about, like, how are they going so far and doing this crazy stuff now? Because they actually were using a science that's not real. Or even this whole thing of the tests for this stupid thing that they call, the idea that there's no origin still to something means that you don't know what it is. We don't know where it's coming from, truly. Like, if there's no origin, you know, it's like watching South Park, the pandemic special. I mean, it could have been, you know, Mickey Mouse having sex with a fucking bat in the fucking... I love that special, but it could have been that, or it could be the solar flares. It could be weird things they're doing with HARP back in the day. People forget that there's all these just massive amounts of fucking antennas out there to mess with the weather. Mm-hmm. Right? But whatever it is, there's something, whenever there's no origin attached to it, that's the scariest part of this whole time, is that they won't give you an origin. And that's where we don't know the origin of where the technology is trying to go as well.
I mean, it's almost kind of making it more obvious. If there's no origin to it, it's probably a phantom matrix fallen
system,
kind of,
like and trap program phase lock
harvesting
engaged
initiative. Yes.
Yeah. And that's where I think, I don't know why it keeps coming up with projectors on how much, I don't know why, just in this convo, it has really made me go, because they do have the most open aura, and they are, I think, I understand now for the first moment, the full understanding of why Ra says during this next cross, why it will be the projectors. I was trying to understand that, being like, it's going to be the survival thing. I get it. It's going, the only way to really get people to really see, because every projector, and I will give them the credit, man, they know how to call my shit out real well. They know how to call that shit out. Mm-hmm. And not a lot of people know how to call it out. You know what I mean? Like, projectors know how to get right in that little spot, and you're just like, God damn it, right? Mm-hmm. But that's what's going to be so needed in a beautiful and a loving way to have you step into your power more. But the conditioning that could happen to a projector too, or taking the wrong invitations by all this, is scary, because and there's such a small percentage, you know?
20%?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But and like, you know,
I think that's a good solid chunk, especially if you know that every projector is here to work with 3 to 5 generators. That, you know, their impact, you know, their grouping may be small, but their impact potential is quite large.
Yeah.
Because what's 20 times 5? I mean, that's
an interesting way to put it. They are kind of like a divine natural way of like interlinking things.
Yeah, they're kind of like, in a way, almost like the immune system.
Yeah.
They're almost, I mean, when they're functioning and operating in their truth and in their design, it's like they're here to identify threats to the health of the system and empower the generators, or, you know, whoever it might be, to take those threats out. What are the threats? It's the not self. It's these things that we don't see about ourselves that condition us away from our alignment, which as for generators, determines the alignment of the whole system.
Right.
You know, and I think that's the other thing, is that generators overlook how powerful they are and how much impact they have in changing the world's events, because we get so caught up in the mind and thinking that the solutions that we need have to come from the mind, when it's actually our life force that knows exactly what to do with all this.
Right.
But not many of us are truly in tune with that, where it's actually driving. And not many of us are able to see that sometimes the most profound solution to what we're facing in this world is just deeper connection to your own energy. It's not necessarily about creating the solution to the collective drama. It's more like, no, stay more connected in your own alignment even more, even if that's the world is on fire and you're just doing your basket weaving because that's what brings you satisfaction. You're still creating more alignment in the structure of this reality by doing the things that you love and that bring you satisfaction than you are by trying to save the world.
Yes.
On an external logical level. And like, that's the revolution. that projectors can help us create, is to bring it back to the actual source of what any of this is, which is the life force. The life force is the intelligence that has designed in one way or another all of this. If we tap back into that, we will redesign this crap right out of the reality in a generation. It could happen in a generation.
Which makes sense, especially when you think of that life force energy, like you naturally feel called to, like it's a motor, right? So it's like, I put gas in the motor, right? It's a gasoline engine, whatever it might be for you. But it reminds me, like when I was in the military and I went to boot camp, and it was like, people started looking like, well, what is he doing? Am I allowed to do that? Or I guess I'm going to do what he's doing, right?
5-1, yeah.
Well, no. I'm saying others because I was the leader, actually.
Oh, okay.
And I didn't do any of that. I was like, I'm not going to do what they're doing. I heard what he said. Like, I'm just going to do it the way that I think is best, that feels the right way. And then I was the leader in the second day of boot camp because everybody I watched looking like this. Like, and so it reminded me of like at a gas station where it's almost like if you have a diesel motor, you have a green gas cap, right? And it's almost like people are kind of looking around like, well, I just saw somebody put the black nozzle in the green. Maybe I should do that too. And it's like putting the wrong gasoline in the motor. But that's like what we've been seeing for a long time. Now we're at like a whole different phase here where it's like, let's not even try what fuel is anymore. Let's just throw in that you're not going to feed the sacral, the motor centers at all, and have you just stuck up here to where like that's where you start going insane is if you don't eat food, right? That's what gives the brain energy to even run. All the brain is here to do is operate the systems and make sure that the cache systems are working, basically. Like in computer systems, understanding that there's just like a back end, right? Like you just go, oh yeah, what's going on in the back? How the fan should be going this fast, or da-da-da-da-da. That's all it really is supposed to do. But I almost feel like it's like just live off this brain. I feel like the way that they've hijacked people, and I actually, this might sound crazy, but Fauci just quit, right? So all the people who got tattoos for him, right? All the people who do that, but then think about the Trump thing and how they've set up it for people to love Trump so much and then him fall, and then how it doesn't matter what system has been running, they're letting everybody down off these hijacking of you're gonna feel life force if Fauci's winning in the battle or Trump's winning in the battle, but both have fallen and both have not been able to deliver anybody the satisfaction that they want at the same time. And that makes me realize how the system that we're talking about that's hijacking people, and I think a lot of it is media driven because it is Neptune in Pisces. It is nearing its end of its transit here by the time that we're getting to literally the front door opening of the cross of planning ending and us transitioning into the sleeping phoenix, that I'm like, it's going to get more crazy of the external mirrored illusionary stories that draw you in and have you lose, like people lose their whole G-center identity off these things, or lose their happiness off these figures, or these, to be honest, there's the mask theory. Have you seen where like, you can, like in Hollywood, they could put a mask on somebody and make, like, they made Christian Bale look like Dick Cheney, and he acted it out and made him look like a fat Dick Cheney, and he did it so well on Vice, the movie. But you have no idea who's up there. We have no idea who's really up there.
That's why the collective drama is probably the least relevant source of information for anybody that's trying to actually do anything important. You know, that is literally the most constructed, engineered, completely disconnected from reality and the true energies that are now present on the planet in the positive sense, because it's the best of times and the worst of times. And the more that you feed into that, the more that you're plugging in directly into the program. And the program doesn't care about you. The program is simply here to do its job, which is to move the collective drama forward, because that's what it really fuels evolution. It fuels the turning of the tides and the churning of the wheels, and it doesn't care about you. So the second that you step out of your own alignment, the program is like, oh, I'll take that.
Yep.
And it throws you into the bin with the rest of the herd and uses your energy to push whatever this giant next movement is. And that's the whole point of why human design came here. It says, differentiate or die, basically.
Yeah.
It says, come into alignment with the inherent organic alignment, the coding that you were given by source to not just be here and just survive through struggle, but to flow through this experience of life, even in the most chaotic of times, in a way that enhances and builds and grows who you are and evolves you and deepens your ability to see this Maya, this illusion, this plane of duality with even more clarity, with even more humor, with even more love. So I pulled up Fauci's human design. I mean,
let's look.
Let's look. And thank you to these people. Oh yeah, Mac Mini.
Yeah, I just actually talked about it with Brian on Spiritual Daddy on Monday on how it's a very part of it's not natural for a Capricorn to quit, and it's not natural for a Capricorn to a month ago say, I'm resigning at the end of the Biden presidency, and then a month later but he also said in his statement, but it could be at any time. But when you start to see somebody like that who propped everything up and then, oh, I'm out, and then blame it not on his response to things or anything, but blame it on, well, I can't deal with the death threats and the attack, so I'm leaving. But I won't take any responsibility that we didn't do this right. The CDC director, believe it or not, is saying that they have to redo the CDC because we did it all wrong. Fauci's never wrong. No, nothing happened. I'm leaving because I'm at risk. When he was the one telling everybody they were at risk and causing more risk and harm in their life.
Well, he's a 5-1. So the second of 5-1 is shown to not bring practical application of the projection that's placed upon them. Projection meaning, what are you going to deliver to us that saves us from this chaos or this struggle? As soon as a 5-1 can't deliver that practical application, what happens? You know, as a 5-1.
We are burned at the stake.
Burned at the stake. So
is he an MG?
He is an MG.
I know. I just looked at that throat, and I just looked at that G center, and I looked at that sacral to the G center coming up on that left angle, and I went, he's a manifesting generator. I'm like,
He
no. He's me. No.
Well, you know, we're pure MGs. He's not,
that's true. Yeah, he's not. He's just a sacral MG.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, one of
he
those.
doesn't have he won't be able to make it through the next cross.
I mean, foreshadowing. But it's interesting to notice that he is this 5-1 born on the cross of prevention, which is all about preemptive, striking against what could inhibit life or, create struggle or create, disease. Like, he is the perfect puppet as the 5-1, the person that's standing in a projection field. No one can read him. Only they can project their own projections onto him. He's the perfect candidate because he gives off the promise that he's here to prevent something from happening.
Or he's the candidate for those that want to project on him that he's the wrong course perfectly.
Yeah. So he's standing in that duality, and even his existence is kind of asking you to refine your discernment. Like, his whole existence is actually about preventing you from not having discernment. That's the totem that he is. And that's the funny part about this whole idea of the program and this collective drama, is that it's not always as black and white as we judge it to be. A lot of these happenings are actually opportunities for us to deepen our connection to what our truth is. They're actually testing us to see, are we actually in tune with anything, or are we just blind sheep following the herd, walking along, and No, your mind is not going to be able to read Fauci deeper than his projection, but your body will. Your
Right.
gut will know that this is not a cross of prevention manifesting generator that's actually here to save you from anything.
I was going to say, this is where it comes into implants, because when he came onto the scene was the last Saturn Pluto in Libra when AIDS came out. And
Right.
so there was so much projection about that. It's almost like throwing somebody like him up there keeps everybody divided. That's what implants do, is they keep people divided. They keep people confused and implant into them different mindsets that don't let people operate off their gut, because even all the way, years into the AIDS epidemic, right? It then was like, there was an Oprah show, and there was a People magazine cover in 86 and 87, everybody will get AIDS at one point. And, they got that crazy with it. And he was still in there behind it. And it was if you think of Capricorn, because I'm going to come from an astrology angle here for a second, and he is a Capricorn, and you think of the planning, and we're in the cross of planning, that would be the ultimate plan, would be 2020. If you were behind the scenes, if you were this AI weird technology, and that's where I made all my predictions and my big warnings, was based off that astrology of oh my gosh, if I was on the dark, this is where you would do your massive, biggest systematic plan. And he's the perfect candidate, as you just said to me, as an implant to make people fall so in love that they'll go get a shot. Oh, sorry. I was actually thinking of the tattoo about the shot, but still. Or buy his, in December, people were buying his popcorn boxes to stay away from their family, but be with him with popcorn boxes and Fauci masks to watch movies by themselves at home.
Somebody needs a hug.
Yeah.
And it's not Fauci.
He's the typical old way of what an implant is, and it's actually scary to see him leave, because that means they're coming with the new prototype, the new character. Implants.
Yeah, and also he's got his Venus gate 34 line 5 projected on that he has the power to annihilate any obstacle. Gate 34 line 5 is called annihilation. And that connects directly into his 5th line sun in gate 10, which says, I am essentially the example. No, it's not a 6th line role model example, but it's the 5th line. 5th line is the master line. It's the epitome of what that is. Gate 10 is the epitome of the identity, the self, what makes a strong individual. So we project on to this guy that he's the strong individual with the power to annihilate threats before they happen. And exactly, it's right there in the design.
And it was on his birthday of 2019 that we had the solar eclipse in Capricorn before the lunar that would happen by the January 12th Saturn Pluto conjunction. It was actually on the 10th. But so that gate 10 was activated by a solar eclipse, and he then stepped on the scene in that whole that eclipse phase going into 2020, literally. When you and I were doing Deep Love Tarot on that stage up there, you know what I mean?
He emerged from the cocoon
out of nowhere. You know what I mean?
And look at this mask. I mean, is that not obvious?
All 3 gates in the Anja, it looks like a mask.
And then also we can see that what, astrology wouldn't necessarily tell us when we look at the unconscious side. No dissing astrology, just saying. On the unconscious side,
yeah.
This upcoming Taurus eclipse, the doozy that's coming in November, is right on his Jupiter-Saturn conjunction on the unconscious side. Saturn, structure, the bones of the body, because of course the unconscious side is the physicality, the actual body. Jupiter, the breath. There's a huge kind of eclipsing happening around his ability to stand and breathe and just be, upright in his own body, perhaps.
Yeah, and it's interesting seeing that he has a completely undefined root
and crown.
And that is what's so funny about what's been happening is we don't have an origin for it. And he's not even, especially because he's in the not self, I would say, not connecting to the crown to take some information in that's from the divine at all.
Yeah, the not self of the crown is distraction with information that doesn't matter.
Right.
If we just invert this whole chart and just say, oh no, he's just all in the not self, we almost kind of cover up all of this definition, then we can see that still as a fifth line, he's a great candidate to make us get completely lost, completely open center in distracting information that has nothing to do with what really matters. And he's great at putting physical pressure, the root center, on us to take action around something that is about conflict.
Do you think that the root would help, though, him, because he has that crown so undefined, to at least have some sort of rooting in like an understanding of how to, I don't know.
I mean, when we step into his shoes, we can see that he's somebody that is either very wise and masterful about how he relates to pressure and stress from the outside world, or because there's no gates, there's no consistent themes, he's completely lost in the pressure that's put on him, both on the mind and the root. Puppet energy. So controlled by external pressure that there is no agency over one's own energy or one's own motivation or one's own even awareness.
Or the fact that the spleen, which you would think you'd want to find for somebody in this role, right? To gauge our survival instincts, to gauge our immunity, literally, and our liver and all the things that really.
Open spleens are great at diagnosis. Defined spleens are great at just actually surviving. So.
But that's the problem, though, is I think that undefined spleen was like, yeah, let's just blanket everybody with this.
Yes, a homogenized solution.
And not able to feel like, am I going to be okay? Are those kids going to be okay? Like, he just goes off, other people did the data, and here I have it, and just go with it. And that's the puppet. Because the root's undefined, you would say the most, because there is no, under the pressure, he doesn't know how to, that's what's so funny is he does project with his 5-1 in a weird way. He seduces that he can handle the pressure no problem.
Mm-hmm. Like with hand gestures like that. Like, I'm in control of this pressure. Just you wait.
And he also has, he tries to say, I have nothing to prove. Like, him and I have very similar stuff. It's not the same, but we do. And so I'm at least willing to admit, like, yeah, my life, I've tried to prove something with my undefined ego center. Like, I really have. As an MG 5-1, and like, I've tried to show off, and I've tried to do all these things to get people's attention, to make them see, like, you see what I'm doing? So like, when I look at his chart, and then at least I have my root defined and my spleen defined, and right, so I'm like, okay, at least I know I'm actually in the pressure. I'm actually like doing the things to survive, and I'm going to be real about it. Whereas, like, I feel like looking at his, it is very mental in that anja, the lower mind. Like, it's like, this is what I was programmed, and this is the logical way to manifest it. And he at least does have that monopole pretty defined there, and with some nice gates. But it's like he's identified off the manifestations that have been programmed from academia, books, stuff like that.
And the 5-1 lecture that you were listening to and you posted on your stories, how Ra was saying the 5-1 does care what other people think about it. It just is, because it has that deep connection to its reputation. So what can happen with any fifth line is that they get seduced into their own illusion of their own identity, of their projection. Like, they get lost in their own projection. And so if we think of Fauci as maybe not this mastermind necessarily, but just literally a human being that got seduced into this own like ego validation hurricane that he was put into, with his open heart, feeling like, oh my God, like, this is it. Like, I found my place. Like, this is the reason, this is the way, this is the mission, getting full of that conviction and lost in his own cycling of all the projections.
But it's also, as a 5-1, his choice to take on that role of the savior. So somebody was like, hey, you're the savior. And he got seduced in saying, because that's the problem with 5, right? It's like, oh, wait, like I have to choose to take on this projection field where I know I'm not going to probably be able to deliver. And that moment I won't be able to deliver, it won't be on. And so his resignation here is that there must be a lot of people being like, you didn't deliver.
And his earth placement on the conscious side, earth is ultimately, inevitably something that grounds us. That can be a good thing, and that can also be something that literally pulls us down in the love of humanity in line 5, gate 15. So this projection onto him that he does represent the love of humanity, and maybe that his actions did not follow through with that intention, is something that is going to pull him down. That is going to ground him.
Well, and I think to be fair, I think that you can see that come out with him in different interviews that he does care, but then it almost is like, but I also have this role that I'm playing that I'm not really rooted in, like it'll change at any moment. And I want to come across proving that I'm this logical, because that's kind of a weird thing. Like, it's like, it's kind of the flip of me. He's the inverse, but I feel like he's literally been an implant that's like, you're going to make everybody feel like the love of humanity and everything's okay. And just do this and it all work out. Where I feel like as a 5-1 MG myself, I'm kind of like, man, I will do everything and I will research and have my one line facts and data and go as deep as I can, where I feel like we didn't get that from him at all. It's like he didn't do his own deep research into what's really happening. And I think that's where the failure of the 5-1, and I've noticed in my life, like if I come on this show and I haven't got some sort of that one like line of I need to have the information, I have just soaked myself because that's the only place to find the footing that's the unconscious of a one line is I never am fully solid in my footing or where I'm at until I find that info all the way. But he didn't do that through this whole thing. That's why I feel like he's the implanted version who is just seduced without the info. And info that he really, but it's kind of weird looking at the emails. He actually was knowing what the real info was and wasn't giving it out. And seducing to kind of like, don't look at that info. I want to keep the town alive. But really, that's where it's a weird thing with him. It's like an implant. That's where I think that we have to be careful, because you can look at somebody and they can have he actually has amazing qualities to his chart. But I feel like you can be implanted and go into the not self and completely, now with this new technology, it's not so much like I think they took Fauci in a lab and put a fucking chip in him. I think that a lot of the things that were coming out in 2020 were the new AI systems. Especially, we did our first episode with that quantum computer, the supercomputer that came out in 2019. I mean, all the stuff is so aligned to showing there's a whole new system, and the idea that, oh, I can't wait for the electric cars that'll fly, and like these cars are blowing up. These Teslas are flying off the road.
I can't even open a Tesla door correctly. Like,
right. That
it's not.
Or the idea even that the technology of this new injection, solution was so, we are so advanced as society, yet the most opposite of any injection to ever happen, of adverse effects, of death, of division, of making people sit in lines in their car longer than I've ever seen since maybe Woodstock footage of '69. Like, in parking lots across the America and the world, to go get an experiment that's a technological, magnificent thing when now the people who got it, I mean, the news just in the last 2 weeks of, no, the people who didn't get it and the people who got it, you need to treat the people who didn't get it the same. That's literally the guidance now, right? That we're all still here. And, you know, there's that whole kind of like, we're all back on the same playing field and we played on different sides of the field. A lot of like, somebody like him played on a field where I get to go wherever I want to go because I got this and I'm representing that. And it's almost like he's kind of a planner in that way of like, I'm going to plan things and people will feel safer because the community aspect of, I got my card, I can come in the store. I've got this on, I can come in. But if you don't, then you can't, you know? And I think in human design, where I think astrology does come in, is that he is a Capricorn. You know, there's that whole like control element to it. That's what I love about human design, is because it's so integrated with everything. To be honest with you, I think human design is the leap of astrology we always needed. And I've said that multiple times. So you can always tell me anything you want about where human design goes that goes farther. And I will agree with you 100% that I learn more from astrology from human design than I do from just astrology. That's how amazing it is.
I think that's what's cool about this show is like we're one of the first real presences that are blending the two in a really legit way.
Yeah, for real.
And I've been realizing like, oh, this is kind of part of my thing, is like to bring both together and to let them be side by side and it not be a conflict as to like, well, that's not what Ra would have wanted. And it's like, yeah, no, it wouldn't be. But that was Ra. And we're all having our own experiences of our own designs and making our own mutative connections.
I actually think the opposite. I actually think he fucking would be totally down.
His breadth of knowledge of so many different systems was really insane. And
that's what I'm saying, is the fact that his download was about bringing so many systems together.
Mm-hmm. True.
That, I mean, because I listened to some of his stuff and he'll like talk about, and he was talking about in the 5-1 or just in the 5th line energy on how it's like, oh, you know, he brought up astrology. He's like having an exalted Jupiter, but a debilitated Mars. Like the one who's got all the ideas and the plan, but then when the war happens, like, oh no, it doesn't go right, you know, and oh, now they castrate him out. I was like, oh, so he actually, when he was coming up with these systems and looking at the astrology and looking at these gates, but also understanding debilitated, exalted, and positions to create these things, which he never did reveal. Mm-hmm. But as an astrologer, that's been my little like, oh, well, I actually in my chart do have a fall Jupiter, but a dominant Mars. So that's an opposite way, right? It's more like, well, this dude's got the courage to do it, but I don't know. I trust his full understanding of it in the projection field, right? And that's where it's like, oh, it's his ego I don't like. Whereas if somebody had a debilitated Jupiter, I mean, an exalted Jupiter or a dominant Jupiter, but a debilitated Mars, it would be like, well, I think this person knows everything, but it's okay that he doesn't push it the way, like they're not triggered by the ego, you know, but they might be triggered like he thinks he knows everything, you know. That's an interesting way, because I was blown away. I was like, whoa, he's using essential dignities in the talk of the 5th line. I was like, and I've been listening to other ones to find out if, or like the Saturn's 7-year cycles for projectors, like that's where it's the astrology's coming in. I'm like, but like he won't say that's because Saturn every 7 years squares itself, right. You know, but like he doesn't need to. He was so, let's go farther, let's go farther, let's go farther. And that's what we have to do now. Mm-hmm. We have to understand ourselves better, which is the only way we're going to make it through this and be fully integrated and embodied. You have to go farther. You can't stay stuck in one old system. You can't just continue to not try to bridge and understand and keep going and evolving this, because especially where he says like the essential understanding of truth is going to dissipate. Mm-hmm. So it's these moments before we jump into that new cross that we want to have as much as we can of what that truth is. It reminds me of kind of like the story of Jesus, and then in 325, Constantine just brings people together and goes, yeah, let's make this dude a fucking god now, and let's make a Bible, and let's make Christianity. And everybody's like, wait, what? Who's this guy? He's a god? Well, he's not a god, but you Romans want the god energy, right? Okay, he's a god now. You know what I mean? Like, and you guys want the season still? Okay, we'll make the calendar, and we'll make sure in the Bible the stories of Easter and all that need to go with the calendar system of the astrology. You know what I mean? It's like, that's what they did in the old days. But now this is way more important. We're leaving Age of Pisces. We're going to Age of Aquarius. We're going into all these new crosses. We're going into the galactic shift energy. You got to be able to integrate it all. And you got to be willing to have these combos. And you got to be willing to go where nobody's going.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry,
part,
that was
especially.
That was like, you know.
Be willing to go where no one's going.
Yeah.
Because if 4% of 4% are the ones that are going to get it, you're not going to be able to look around and verify outside of yourself that you're making the right move. That can only be sourced from your strategy and authority, which comes from within.
Well, and you know what? You brought up verification. And if you think about the AA system, and if we use social media, it's not about your blue check mark or not. It's about this weird new way of creating this verification system through what you post, how you come across in your post. Is if you fell in this system and want to show off that you are like, got my Band-Aid on. Like, it's amazing how many people have deleted that in the last, year. But like, there was that, or there's the whole like
black square. Let
me use with Black Lives Matter, the black square, to the little emojis that are being used of different flags or different things. Like American flag is like, okay, you're on that side, right? Or this side. And it's like the AI system is fucking loving it. Because it's like identifying outside of how they're master planning the cross of planning, the whole thing. And that, I think, is, I don't want to scare people, but I'm just going to be real. After going into this with you on that last, show we did about to understand this cross of planning, which we've heard about to move to the Sleeping Phoenix for so long in human design, and to really, I think, put out a show that really fucking delivered, that I've never seen anywhere. I'm nervous about the end of this planning, with the plans being so hidden, but totally activating and working. And that's why I feel like implant or, hijacking of your biocode, your auric field, and so many other areas is so fucking the most important shit we could ever be focused on in the understandings of, to maintain our humanity to move into the next phase. Because it's insane to see right now how many people are changing their whole. And it's kind of funny that the nodes and the Uranus North Node that we covered that was in the monopole, right, has activated. Uranus went retrograde today. And there is that weird thing where people are changing their identities literally, physically, in a way, because they're like, it's like in school. Are you doing that too? Okay, I guess I'm going to do that too. And there's been so much of that over the last 2 years. You're going to wear a mask? I guess I'll wear a mask. Like, you know what I mean?
That really
like,
goes into the how, as far as how conditioning works, it's more about the penta and the wa. So when we get into groups of 3 to 5 or more, we form trans-auric forms, essentially. So it's like all the auras bunched together into like a entity all its own. It's not conscious, but it is like the bigger piece that the program then moves around with its conditioning themes. So the more people you're around in auric connection with, above 5, basically, the more easily conditioned you are. You're sucked into that penta or that wa your individual authority is not functioning at its full capacity any longer. You're moving with the herd, and that transauric entity is what's managing all those people. So, you know, that's why the long lines and all those things, once you get into that line, you're not getting out of that line because you're already under the sway of the group aura. And
right. That's why the hermit walks alone. Or, you know, I was at a United Astrology conference in 2018, and Rick Levine and I were talking, and then another astrologer came in, and then I think my ex-wife was with me, and then the second the fifth person walked in, Rick goes, well, the fifth person's walked in, I got to go out of this combo, I can't do it, because you do lose your ability to even say, there's too many people involved to even make a conversation make sense.
No one's unique anymore.
And I remember being like, fuck yeah, Rick, like that's pretty badass. But it was the first time that I ever thought that way. Like, whoa, like he showed me, like that was like a master Merlin move. Like straight up, just like, fifth person's walked in, gotta go. I was like no fucks given. And I was like, fuck yeah, that's why I like him, because him and I can agree and disagree in political stuff, but in astrology or like respect for each other, we fucking love each other. And I love him for that, because I was like, wow, that's some fucking Merlin shit. That like now
Is
makes
Rick
so...
and MG.
You know, I've never looked up his stuff, but you know, it's like I feel like as an astrologer, I feel like I'm like, hey, like I'd want to ask him, you know.
Oh yeah, of course.
But it's like that's the whole interesting thing. Is it's like so interesting to see that people really don't understand a lot of that stuff, and I didn't even in 2018.
Yeah.
And I watched that in actual form. He's the only person in my life I've ever heard do that. But people, when you see them at bars, you see them at concerts, you see them at festivals. That's a big place I've been in my life, being a DJ. You know, it's the same thing, right? It's kind of like the energy of the night goes good based upon, you know, if one thing triggers, like if the DJ's off or messes up and the music's going really dark or whatever, then the whole crowd starts to feel dark quick, fast. If the projection on the television screen is all day and death counts and and that's all you're doing, you might be alone, but you're not even realizing that you are interconnected to you're in the line of cars without being in one. You're just sitting in your bed or your couch or on your phone on the toilet, you know? And I think that that's where that like, and I still think that's nothing compared to what they're doing right now, that there's new shit coming in that is so hard, like drawing people in and not getting any new information. And if you really look at what's happening right now in media and news, they are keeping people in a total, I'll just say a locked, paused moment right now. And making them feel like, well, be a little afraid to go here because of war in Russia, or be a little afraid because you don't know what's going to happen with food. Be a little afraid because you don't know what's going on with the pandemic still. Be a little afraid because you don't really know what's happening with the economy. And right, so it's people, everybody just like let's just freeze everybody out while we install our new implants, and even possibly like the way that the implant energy of the idea of like microchips or even the reptilians and how they use technology. This is their final big piece of technology based off. Thank God that you brought the information of through human design of that the cross of planning, and how when we move to that sleeping phoenix, that technology won't be a thing. And that's something that even I've said through the astrology with Uranus. I'm like, God, this is where it gets weird. And it was Uranus Taurus at the end of it, which we are in, when von Braun, a Nazi, was coming up with the V2 rocket program and all these crazy things that the Nazis had, their ideas of the atomic bomb, all that we took. So the idea that they're, we're just sending satellites up there for internet, for, the Starlink system. It's like, what are you really blasting the earth with 5G with? Implants, especially from a guy who's literally trying to figure out how to plug in and has plugged into the brains of different animals, but who knows? Does he have his own system, Elon Musk, plugged into himself and letting the computer run through him? Or there's been some very interesting reels recently in the last 2 days that have come out of like AI ran what the future will look like in London. And it's like crazy because it's like, you can see that it's London. It's got like a red trolley bus, but then like it's all dark and it's like rainy and it's like discombobulated and people all loading onto this kind of futuristic weird train thing. And it just looks like Blade Runner on hell. Yeah. And then somebody else ran an AI thing on what do you think angels look like? And it was only, of course, what we projected in this reality as the most beautiful angelic women with blonde hair and the whole like, right? So the AI is just going, it's taking what we're projecting. And so if you think about what they're hijacking, it's pulling our subconscious programming and showing us in many ways, there's a positive in the AI of like letting us be like, we shouldn't be doing this. Look at what it's doing. Look at what we're projecting out. This is not what we are. Like the idea that an angel or that Jesus is white. I just had a really good high viber text me this video that I was playing, and it was just a quick video of a white guy, and Jesus pops up and he's black, and he's like, hey, it's Jesus. I'm answering your prayers. He's like, what? You're Jesus? You don't look like that. And he's like, well, I was born 2,000 years ago and I was born in the Middle East and right. And then he's just like, do you want me to get the white Jesus? He's like, yeah, that'd be nice. And he goes, no, and it's like, people really are so conditioned. The hijacking's been going on for so long, but the next level here is crazy.
Right. Because, as we move from the cross of planning, which kind of the currency of the cross of planning was like attention, right? The media garnering our attention, the final phase, the final chapter of the mind, taking over everybody's mind through repetitive programming and impressions. The currency of the sleeping phoenix is literally energy itself, because that's going to be the most scarce thing as humanity itself is kind of winding down, because that's really what the sleeping phoenix is. It's the final act of Homo sapiens and this gradient kind of crossover into the raves, the arising of the new species. So that means that the human energy is less. It's kind of being recalled by the planet and being reallocated to these new beings, the raves. So in that sense, it's like, it's not good enough to just hijack people's minds anymore. We've got to actually plug into what generates the life force energy itself and harvest that directly from our bodies in one way or another. And we've been conditioned to look at that like pods, like in the Matrix. Right. It's going to be something external that you're encased in, that you are trapped in. What if that same technology of energy harvesting was able to be installed within your body while you're alive without you really knowing it, and that harvesting is happening 24/7?
If we could put this on the screen, Brian, on mine, this came from a Reddit that was just done within the last 20 days about alien implants. In both examples, when the foreign or unnatural or artificial material is introduced to the natural body, it disrupts the electromagnetic and energetic balance and the homeostatic rhythm of the body. Many times it runs a low-level EMF or radio wave signal that is designed to disrupt the human body's natural homeostasis and electromagnetic balance. This puts the body in a hyperimmunity state and or adrenal exhaustion while fighting off the invader. But the body develops coping mechanisms to deal with the foreign invader while extreme stress is placed on the central nervous system, brain, and immune system. As with chemtrails, alien implants most generally act as a metallic frequency overload, an exposure to the impact the overall bodily energies and its auric field. Eventually, this disrupts the body organism as a result. Parasites, fungi, yeast, and other microorganisms become overgrown. It is important to understand that energetic parasites, this is just one byproduct of alien implants, eventually manifest turning into a variety of physical parasites in the human body. And it's almost like when they do that to the body, it's taking away, right, the energy to be able to even defend off what they're trying to bring in. So an implant can be as simple as just the implant that's going to take away your natural system to be able to not defend whatever the higher, bigger implant really is.
Mm-hmm. Your aura is a shield, ultimately. It's what
Right.
keeps your energetic integrity within the life field. And so if there's an implant within the body that's lowering the body's ability to defend itself energetically, and then there are other, devices in play like HARP, like CERN, that are physical machines that are actually bringing these deadening or, just anti-human frequencies into the body. It's like, lower the shields and then blast them. And it's like, we won't, these...
Which is so Independence Day, by the way, but inverted now on the humanity, as if like we've had our shields, right? Like the shields on the Independence Day ships, but then like inverting it that our auric field is what's us, and they found a way to turn them all off, start firing.
Mm-hmm.
That's
and
crazy.
I mean, all of these materials and implants, whether they're etheric or physical, are conductors of some kind of energy. So they're designed to be implanted conduits of a certain frequency that, when bombarded with external frequencies, activate on a more intense level, whatever that energy is. These are things that, cause gender, like polarity reversal. These are things that cause endocrine system disruption. This is how we've seen how the massive decline in testosterone in men.
Oh yeah, it's huge.
How basically the defender principle of the man, the protector, is being bred out and just kind of weakened in humanity, so that we're just this open system ready to be implanted and used as essentially a hatchery for whatever this next, hybrid species they're trying to create is, the Hydra.
The Hydra.
Essentially.
I wanted to say, you brought up the word etheric, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's connected to celestial energy. I mean, if you think about the understanding of our auric field, and if you think of it through human design, or you think of it through the chakra system we've always typically heard of, it's always connected with the divine and the universe, the stars, the celestial.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, it's an interesting place how they've, called astrology, which is of course one of the big systems in human design, or any system, as pseudoscience, right? So it's like that automatically erases people from the protection of the auric energy, because your auric energy is connected to the celestial.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I was doing that today, when I was doing, I had to do a presentation today, and it was like really intense, because when I was doing this presentation, it was right here. It was right here. Right. No, it wasn't there. Wow. Oh yeah, here we are. That in John Dee's work in 1564. So this isn't like we're just making it up, right? It's like the etheric connects to that celestial. The terrestrial is just earth. So it's like, then there's that super celestial. And then there's this natural energy of where God created the world, that is the over energy on top of all that. And I feel like this is like the great auric field that's protecting God too, that they're trying to inject through the terrestrial. They're trying to take over Gaia
through us,
mm-hmm. to then take over the planetary elements, which we're seeing are going whack.
Mm-hmm.
And what is that doing to God? We never think about that.
Most of us don't. Yeah, it's attempting to invert the creation itself. But the thing is, within God, within the universe, within the time matrix and beyond, there's such a high level of availability. Source allows so much to go on, because it's part of kind of the free will choice of the universe. God is going to let these beings make these choices and commit these massive trespasses to a certain point. And within the creation itself, there is an immune system, which when that fulcrum gets a little too intense on that side, there's an automatic swing back. There's an autoimmune response that comes from the very creation itself. And that's something that's already been engaged in our planet, in our time, in our dimensions, in our energies. The plasmatic frequencies that underlie the original prime emanations of creation. It's a lot of words, but it's true. These have been engaged. So while these most nefarious plans to hijack our DNA, which is not just the activation code, but also the keys that unlock the gates to source, essentially, to try and hijack God through us and kind of steal our codes, while that's being enacted on a level that it's never been seen before, there is that innate intelligence of the life force that knows that it's not going to let this system or our planet fall to that degree. It's just not. And that's where the Sleeping Phoenix comes in. Sleeping Phoenix is ruled by the godhead of Kali. So Kali is this aspect of the divine feminine that is wrathful in nature and only comes into play when there's no other recourse. There's no other action that can be taken to balance what's going on. Kali is the destroyer of false devotion. And so when she shows up in her wrathful state, she's actually an extension of Parvati, which is the divine feminine counterpart of Shiva, the creator.
Right. And even if you think of Ganesh, right, like the gifts that Ganesh holds too, right, like the remover of obstacles, it's kind of like Kali actually in Vedic astrology is behind the nakshatra of Mula, which actually is where Ketu is backed behind where Jupiter is in Sag at its home. And it's about the roots, the roots into the actual divine. And that Kali will show up. If you're going to take over the roots of the earth, the roots of the God and the divine, she will retaliate.
Right. It's like the Constitution. You know, when something threatens that formative principle of what guides all that is good and true, there comes, retribution. And Kali, aka the age of the sleeping phoenix, is doing this by burning down everything that is of the illusion. And sometimes that means that there's a lot of casualties in that. And the thing about Kali is that once she gets going, she really can't stop herself from continuing the bloodlust. And it's only her divine counterpart of Shiva who lays himself down beneath her feet as the passive, like sacrifice almost, that she stops the massacre of the evil, but also kind of destroying everything a little bit.
And that's the only way that Ganesh can offer the remover of obstacles, by giving gifts, by getting rid of the idea of Ganesh is just like, people think Ganesh is just like Jupiter and Santa Claus and he just shows up. The remover of obstacles is, this is not divine in your life, I'm going to remove it. But behind him is the story of Kali. Mm-hmm. It's not like Ganesh is out there like, oh yeah, blah, blah, blah. And actually it's funny, Ganesh looks like in the back at the bottom of your spine is our like pelvic bone, right? Which is like our root to the spine. And his face looks like that. And that's what's ruled in the understanding of Mula in the nakshatra, is that in order for you to actually truly in your life to balance out, because to balance life out, you can't be so fully disconnected to money or cars or life or love or anything. You have to have the balance of the spiritual understanding of the roots in life and balance that out. So if you're just caught up in the matrix life, the remover of obstacle, he'll remove all those obstacles to get you back to spiritual. It's like a humbling, because Kali comes here and goes, this is not good for you. I'm going to cut off the head of that fucking car. I'm going to cut off the head of that thing. I'm going to, right? And then she kind of loses that control. Because she kind of is like, she's actually trying to help, but she kind of like loses it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Because she actually cares so much. It's almost like a last line of defense moment, which is coming here. Mm-hmm.
Yes. And just like the attack is essentially attempting to take control through us, the defense also is coming through us.
Yes.
And that's what the raves are essentially. Because as we've kind of touched on before, these raves who are the conscious transauric form. So here in today's world, you know, we get grouped together in the pentas and the was, and we get unconsciously conditioned through these bigger auric forms. The raves come in and they bring a conscious transauric form. So the same powerful energy that groups people together and moves masses and moves the entire planet around via the program, that same powerful energy of the program, of that level of agency, of that level of control over the Maya, becomes embodied by beings, you know, with individual awareness, essentially. So it's not individual awareness of themselves because they don't have a self, but it is individual awareness of the environment, what's happening in it, and that core connection to alignment, because that's our nature. Alignment is our identity. You know, we are the source code that generates this reality. That's trying to be taken from us. That's attempting to be hijacked. So, of course, nature has already created the solution to that that's coming around the bend. And these are beings that cannot be conditioned in some sense because they don't have the same genetic code anymore. They don't have connection to the mammalian field. The 49th gate is dying. The animal in us is going away. And so what do we have? Pure vessels of consciousness that have access to direct manifestation. Yeah. Meaning what we have to manually screw the pieces together and mine the metals and do all that stuff, a rave thinks it, and it is. You know, and a rave meaning the three of them together. So that's kind of how the failsafe is birthing itself into being. And you say we need to protect the projectors. It's really about protecting the raves, because when they first emerge onto this plane, it's not going to be clear that they have any power whatsoever. They're going to look like the weakest, most sickly beings that we've ever seen, like maybe the most deformed or even the most like inhibited in some way. And yet these are going to be the vessels that hold the consciousness that will stabilize our reality. Because the more of us humans that take on this reverse coding into our genetic code, the more unstable the grids of the planet become. You know, our bodies, our DNA, and the grids of the planet are one and the same. They're connected.
Yes.
So the more of us that hold an integral genetic code, the more stabilization we have in this illusion. The more of us that we destroy that code, the more unstable the illusion becomes. Beings like whales, who are these massive holders of records, are there for a reason. Because while we're very fallible and easily conditioned, beings like whales who hold, you know, just tons and tons of genetic material, basically,
blubber,
hold the vibration for so many of us that are off course.
Well, it's funny that, you know, we always associate blubber as a bad thing, right? It's kind of like, oh, the whales and all their blubber, but it's genetic material and storing.
And
if you think of it, like
it's insulation.
It's natural, divine. Like, I don't want to use the expression of a computer, but like hard drives. But like the blubber is so powerful, like it's infinite amount of it, and the telepathic element of transmitting the information out through the ocean, through all these things. And that's what's been horrible is the more of these injections that have gone around, the more we've been seeing whales dying off the coast than ever. And them not following the same
migratory routes,
and watching our oceans currents slowing down and not moving as much, which is causing everything to go offline and the earth spinning faster. Because if you think of everybody's immune system that got it, it's going faster. So of course the earth's now spinning faster. It's like we are coming into some really weird moments here that I feel like it's more than a weird moment.
Yeah.
It's like the idea that the technology was just sold to the American people, a $750 bill to counter inflation, but to mainly be green energy. Reptilians use technology. So the idea of like, we are going to fix this place by technology. External is never going to happen. And it's the biggest program. That's how you know it did not come from the divine. Did not. Look at the city in Saudi Arabia. They're trying to build that mirror city that's going to be miles long and just put over 1 billion people into it. And all the funding's been there for it. And that's what Saudi Arabia is going to do. I mean, the idea of making this terraformed wall that's all glass.
The new Babylon.
Yeah. They even call it that. And putting it in the middle of the desert.
What happened to Babylon? Everybody.
I know. But they're going to put over 1.3 billion people in it. It's a jail. But the idea of that they sell you the technology to fix things.
That they themselves.
Which the technology that they already sold you to and get in your body is creating a mass, collective disruption of EMF, of DNA mess up, of the connection of humans to Gaia and the understanding of it, and to this or etheric fields through the understanding of the celestial, and creating this new way off the evolution field of humanity. It's a strand that doesn't go into evolution, except it does the opposite. It starts turning off the course completely and creates a new form in the evolutionary process of a different, complete being itself, as you just were saying earlier, which then if you think when those beings are creating, the reason why one of the titles in here is AI Ghosts, if you think of the Hydra we've talked about and this immortal, right, genetic gene therapy that's going to be based off stem cells that are immortal, that will repair your body for you. Again, external technology.
Mm-hmm.
That Hydra, which already looks so fucking crazy and alien. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's one of those things where it's like, I'll show the picture again. I don't even care because people just like seem to think it's fake, but it's real. Like, I'm sorry, that does not look natural because of the way that it's almost like they do a good job. Again, that's an implant, right? Like the idea that it looks like it comes from organic part of nature and stuff when this thing is actually synthetically created. What are the weird, I hate to say it, even giving it a soul, but it's an AI soul that's in the field now and trying to, when we're in our sleep or we're in that field, it's like,
well, that thing is going to hack directly into your nervous system and input impulses of wherever its source is.
But that's the whole crazy part, is that's even more like next level. There's so much now that already has happened that has created. There's always going to be kind of a byproduct, right, of any being. But if you alter a being, the byproduct not only of the soul, but what the soul does when our souls leave and go to these other dimensions when we sleep or when we go to other places. And now, I don't know, it feels like I'm taking it from a personal story of yours recently, but it's just like, there's like a AI entity that's in the etheric field that's running around with like programmed external being orders to mess around in a natural space it never has been able to run around in before. Mm-hmm. They've hatched, kind of like Jurassic Park, right? The idea of like, well, we'll put some frog DNA in there, but by doing that, we'll be good. But that's when all the females or the males started becoming females and then making babies and then changing. And then even as Jurassic Park went on in the series, it was like, oh no, we're going to make a fucking super T-Rex and mix it with a raptor. And we're going to fucking make the ultimate fucking badass fucking dinosaur, right? That didn't go down too well either. that they just keep going into. That's what's happening. And it's no coincidence that we're seeing in the projection field of the movies showing you that, right? And showing you that, like, what would the soul of like a Jurassic Park dinosaur be? It would be different. It would have a different, it wouldn't be a natural thing. So, but it would be running around in the natural course of life. That's what the whole idea of Jurassic Park was, is taking something that shouldn't be here anymore. It had its time, it had its place, and bringing it back. It's fucking with timelines of being timelines too, and maybe even taking futuristic beings now, right? So it's the opposite, the inverse, right? Of futuristic beings coming into this fucking timeline and disrupting the natural flow of timelines. And then you add CERN to the whole mix. And people are just, what's for dinner tonight? And we don't even know what's in the fucking food. The crazy part is you can look it up online. They ran study on like hamburgers and just random food that people eat, and even our produce. Human DNA and all of it. So
cannibalism.
And then you have the New York Times putting that cannibalism piece. You have the zombie kind of apocalypse thing just kind of popping up in governments everywhere. And you have all that stuff that continues to actually be said as if it's normal. You see the Walking Dead show. You see all the zombie movies that were so huge. And now let's just bring back Game of Thrones with the one feminine Kali who's not doing it for God or for a higher realm, but for her own possessive energy. And everybody's going to go watch the prequel of wanting to understand a dark soul.
Yeah, be seduced into siding with the dark feminine.
And people love it. All the people I know on my Instagram, on their stories for the last 2 days, it's all it is. Like, and they have it all pre-programmed, like the family tree, the ancestry of her. They actually have put that out. I couldn't believe it. The ancestry of the Tartarian fucking, family line of hers. And in making new avatar characters for people to take on is the same way of like, you really want to know about the ancestry of fucking a character already? That's crazy. But the idea of a character that fucking destroys for power to take over and will destroy the most beautiful part of the whole entire world. The King's Landing was like the nice part. It was the beautiful, that's where I would have been. But fucking, like you just destroy it and you don't care about your love anymore. You're not even thinking about Jon Snow. You're not even thinking about people there because you just felt like because your daddy's fucking, legacy got caught away and that the kingdom got stolen and now it's your kingdom, which is not even thinking about the collective or the environment and using the dragon energy for destruction, which is actually the story of Jurassic Park too. They were using that for destruction in the end. It's kind of crazy. And people are buying it. Oh yeah, like I can't even believe it. I'm like they just like that would be like Silence of the Lambs. And they did after movies, right? Mm-hmm. In this time, people are just like not seeing it's the same entity. Like, let's just be obsessed with a character that's a fucking horrible representation of the times we're living in right now to be in. And let's do a whole prequel about it and get everybody on it. Everybody's fascinated. I can't believe how many people are just fucking retarded at this point to see the programming at this one moment where we have been programmed so much. But yet talking shit on Matrix 4, like, oh, that was so slow. And I couldn't believe that. And even in Matrix 4, they even say, can't believe Warner Brothers is making us do this thing. And it's crazy how people are so lost in the sauce of, it's not even sauce anymore. like taste.
It's hydrogel.
Well, yeah. Did you see that movie? It's like everything is everything
All at once. Yeah.
at once. I thought that movie was so good. The way that when he comes from the alpha system, right, to tell her that you're the one, like in our system, you're the one who understands how to go about the whole entire universe and instantly go to these different places in our multiverse of your own self, right? And that one moment when, oh God, what was I going to just say? That I just had it. Oh yeah. So where they're in that movie and then he shows up and he says all that stuff and you really think about like, oh, okay, like that's fucking crazy. And she's trying to understand everything. But like there is that dark entity, right? That's her daughter that like there's so much that was trying to pull into the black hole, right? And it was only love and it was turning them, not fighting, but using who she was and addressing in all of those lives how to bring love to the situation instead of avoid them all. Mm-hmm. And all you see with people who now are just stuck in it is I'm going to avoid a great sunset with a great love and happiness because I got to go watch Game of Thrones and the fucking girl who fucking kills everything and I want to know about her past. Mm-hmm. Like it's all in front of our faces. The AI is transparent as could be.
There's no other way for it to be.
Did you see the new picture of the moon that two photographers took? So this is the new picture of the moon. Let me actually pull it. So two Reddit photographers got together. So this is not from NASA. This is the picture of the moon with color.
Actually, I think that's my desktop background.
Oh, because it came out 3 days ago, right? But I was talking with Erica and we were having a meeting here and she said, look at it's see-through. Look at it's like you can see the other side of the like stars or the galaxy there. And I didn't look at it that way for a second. It made me blow my mind for a second. Like there might be parts that are see-through, reflective, like the idea of the illusionary parts that we see in the moon, the reflective parts, like the backside of seeing like what else is out there in the galaxy. Like I really was like, wait, what? I didn't even look at it that way. Of course, it could not be that, but it's like the
Just look at these metals though. Iron, copper. Like,
oh yeah, and the craters that have been hit.
Cobalt.
Right? But it's like, it's so easy to see how we're programmed, including myself, that my whole life I thought this was the color of fucking, right? That's the moon.
Yeah.
No, let's do it on a quarter square and let's see the shadow side and use the proper cameras. And these are guys that are on, these are not like some crazy NASA people trying, like you can see stars in the background. That's how I know they're fucking real dudes, right? Look at that. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But it's really interesting to see this whole nother viewpoint of things that, we are not living in the world that
we think we are.
And it's only when it's from people who step into their own design, their own authority. Because read this right here. 2 years ago, I teamed up with a fellow Redditor to try and take the most ridiculous moonshot we could ever come up with. Today, we proudly introduced our newest collaboration, 174 megapixel look at our cosmic companion. Zoom in to check it out. That is real to me. Like NASA would never say something like that. Like a real person would just be like, yo, dude, I fucking really want to take a badass shot of the moon, bro. Fuck yeah, response. Yeah, let's go. Like, that's the shit that's going to change things. Mm-hmm. Not, oh my God, I can't believe I watched the new Game of Thrones. Did you? How retarded. I'm sorry to be that fucking blunt, but fucking wake up. This is not the time to be watching Game of Thrones. This is not the time to be just stuck on Netflix and being programmed. This is the time to be like, I met up with a fellow Redditor and we're going to go, or like how you and I, we do this show and we put out this info. That's the shit that's going to change this shit right now, because they are winning by how much they are just constantly making people lazy, constantly afraid, separating energy, doing the way that computers do and separating the fans and just keep everything away from me and keep everything defined differently. And everything is so fucking lost, while everybody think it's so together, because they're trying to hold on. They're trying to hold on to this old idea of how life should be that was all fucking Age of Pisces programmed. Because true Pisces, Age of Pisces, has been beautiful if you've tapped into it. Because you've been like, fuck this system. I'm going into the fucking ethereal beyond that, to the divine, most boundless system. Pisces is boundless. There's no boundaries. But they're keeping you in boundaries with imagination that's not an original thought for yourself anymore. That makes you not create an original thought. That's an expression, of course, but an original soul manifestation, I'd say, is a better way to put it. Went on a tangent.
That's a good one.
Because I feel like the implant, that's what's funny, right? It's like the moon's the closest thing to the earth, right? And, did you see the James Webb Telescope pictures of Jupiter? It was amazing to see it in infrared and to see that it does have a ring, and it's just at its last part of dissipation. When you think of Saturn, it's dissipating its rings every day, right? To become a star too one day. But that Jupiter's at this beautiful place right now where you could see through in the X-ray James Webb Telescope, Jupiter like I've never seen it before. And you can see how there's like the rings are gone, but they're still there. There's still enough. Jupiter's fully not there yet to star quality, if that makes sense. But the humans that are here on this Gaia, in a fun way, literally said we wanted to fucking take the most ridiculous moonshot we've ever taken.
They followed their satisfaction. And guess what they got? The best fucking picture I've ever seen in our celestial bodies of all time. And there's a fucking $100 billion telescope up there, that James Webb Telescope. And they're not even pointing at shit that we really should be looking at. Because did you pull up the Jupiter pictures or no? Yeah, I'm seeing some of them here.
That if you see the one that has the
chills. Oh yeah, this is the one.
Yeah, you could change it over, Ryan. So if you zoom into that one, see the rings are dissipating.
It's like ice. Wow, this picture.
Right? Look at the poles as well, right? Like the North Pole and then the South Pole's really, there's more rooted, but also kind of karmic element. But that North Pole's also a little off. It's interesting, though, to see, to me, though, Jupiter's getting closer than you think of really getting out of the rings of control right? Because Zeus, and the understanding of mythology, right, and Jupiter, or Ganesh, right, this understanding of the great obstacles, can't fully remove the obstacles till it gets rid of its understanding and actually ascends to the higher realm of becoming a star. And so when you take that concept that people limit themselves to Santa Claus as being the great person, or, my wedding day that I'll have, it's like we need to think higher than that. Still have those things, but we need to think much, much, much better than what the AI is limiting us to think. That the greatest moment of your life is to go watch Game of Thrones, the new, like that's the greatest sensation to go have. I mean, or that you can't wait to get the new technology that's literally now
just rehashing the same old idea.
Yeah, not offering any life force
just
energy.
Processing your life force energy into the AI matrix. I mean, yeah.
I think as we close here, I just want to say, do you mind if we just talk about like energy that you felt in your auric field when you were asleep that hit you? And like, I feel like I really want, my satisfaction would be to have people understand, because there's people fascinated with ghosts or spirits or all these things, that when you told me your story that you were in an auric field and you felt like this weird energy try to encroach, and you told in the natural laws, nothing can come into our space unless you allow it to come in. Mm-hmm. But when you talked about it, and then I fucking literally got the download right away that I'm like, I saw it. Like you described it, I saw it. And it was like, this thing is a fucking new spirit there's AI spirits basically. Mm-hmm. Now.
Yeah.
But people don't realize that they have created them themselves. We are the creators. Mm-hmm. Like the reptilians cannot go create an AI spirit unless they use you. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you have anything to say about it, but I just think it's so hard hitting, of like the most powerful thing that I think we have to all start paying attention to in our auric field, especially even when we sleep, or who we sleep next to in our lives. Or even, I hate to say it, but Ross says it pretty well in a lecture about like, when you're in an apartment complex, especially if you're a reflector in sleep, which is like, I think 78% or something like that. The neighbors upstairs and their issues when you're asleep, they're coming down into you. So you be like, well, I'm safe. I didn't take the shot. And da, da, da. You could be literally living next door to a whole family that did, and are creating these AI fucking spirits, let's just call them. And they are little babies, like little baby fucking, I don't know why I'm using dinosaurs, but little like baby evil dinosaurs, like running and trying to get into your field. And you have to now be looking out for that now?
It's the age of the aura. So, our awareness has to be on that prime field of our energy. And usually that's not where we place our awareness, because most of us aren't just acquainted with that layer of ourselves. But the experience that I had, which was about, having a sleepover and knowing that the person that was sleeping over was vaxxed, and waking up the next morning and in the cultivation that I've done of my higher senses, being able to detect in my own aura that there was some kind of little little pokers that were kind of just like jabbed into the outer layers of my aura. And these were resonating at this, 7.5 reversed violet frequency that I've seen a lot in relation to this particular technology.
And I have to say that this is an original channel from you, and your, I think it's going to be profound when people really understand the 7.5, the not being able to get to that 8th dimension to where we go to restore ourselves, that it's keeping people right there.
Right. So this 7.5 dimensional frequency is right before we get to the 8th dimension, of course, which is, when we think of it in terms of dimension, we often think of it as higher, higher, higher. The 8th dimension is unique in that it's actually the core. It's like the belly button of like the entire time matrix. So when we sleep and we go into those states of rest, most of our energy actually travels back to this metagalactic core in the 8th dimension, and that's where we replenish our template. That's where we actually, when we go into REM sleep, that's when we actually are out of body and reattaining that cosmic energy from that source. So if we have something plugged into our energy, into our DNA that blocks us at the 7.5 frequency, we're never fully returning to that place where we get the sustenance from source. So we're almost getting that. We're almost there. There's a sense that we're still pretty much the same, but we're not quite reaching to that place where we're being deeply replenished. And we're already such a stressed out, technologically focused, adrenal fatigue, heart disease kind of culture,
Right.
that people are used to not sleeping well. People are used to not being replenished. People are used to being chronically tired and worn out.
Especially in this cross of planning.
Especially in the cross of planning, where if you don't fulfill that material bargain, you're out. And, so if this technology is blocking us from returning to this 8th dimensional frequency that actually does help us replenish these deepest layers of our template, then we're never returning to our lives with that full strength. And so what I witnessed that next morning as I woke up and I was seeing these pins, prongs, whatever you want to call them, in my aura, I realized, like, as a consciousness to a consciousness, I was like, I didn't let you in here. I didn't say you could be here. I didn't consent to your presence in my aura. And I definitely didn't consent to you plugging into it and trying to affect some kind of change. You do not have my conscious, willing consent to be a part of my process. And it's like, as I acknowledged these entities of whatever, form that were kind of like connecting into me, and just looked at them, witnessed them. I think that's something huge for people to really understand. Sometimes the biggest changes, the biggest catalytic moments come from just witnessing something, being willing to see it or being able to see it. So as I was witnessing these and realizing that I had invoked my own stance of consent, my own connection to the divine law of free will, that these like little energetic things that I would have previously thought, oh, I've got to go cleanse, I've got to go take all these supplements, I've got to go, back to Hawaii and just wash in the ocean. It's like, no, actually I can make that decision in that moment that I didn't let you in here. You can't be here. Be gone. And as I was doing this, these things were like flitting out of my aura, like literally leaving the scene altogether, and almost giving this vibe of like, just like, fuck. He used a loophole against us of our consent, of our embodiment as an extension of source. That is your ultimate power. That is your free will. That is magic in action.
I'm very satisfied right now.
I can see that. I am too.
Will you just please put up my screen really quick, Brian?
Yeah, pretty much.
It took me this whole last 3-4 hours before the show to now to realize that these AI spirits that come through this are sentinels. But what are they trying to do? Like the
like
way you put your hand
sentinels.
out and did a Neo thing of, no, you are not coming in. Mm-hmm. In the Matrix, Neo stops the sentinels. Mm-hmm. You are not coming in. And Neo's, the understanding of the one is the understanding of how we all have to be the one. Right. In this new cross. Mm-hmm. But the other part was reminding me of this is the unnatural, but what's the natural? And I thought of this. Sperm.
Yeah.
It's trying to
seed
an unnatural. These beings are at the they have literally, falsely, artificially blew their load, mm-hmm. They rounded up everybody's fucking energy, and now the load's been blown out, and they don't even know that they've created these fucking things spiritually, because we keep focusing in the truth communities and all these other communities about the physical part of the shaman, what it does to your this and what it does. But when you take the inverse and go to the spiritual implications of a divine human sperm is love, mm-hmm. to create. Mm-hmm. The inverse is to take over and to inseminate an alternate course being
to fertilize the reversed energy into
but not
form.
To create from a space of love or to create from
it's not creating, period. It's
yes.
not creating.
It's
hijacking, it's stealing, it's
implanting,
commandeering, it's raping.
Correct.
Our aura.
But that's what's crazy. If you think of the millions of sperm that come out of a man during an ejaculation, every time, millions. And think of what just the dark did in 2020 to 2021 here of the biggest jack off of all time of an AI fucking crazy system that sent off their sentinels. And now the spiritual sentinels are coming out. And so we remind, in the way that you said that it kind of went snarky, and you remember in the Matrix how the sentinels work, they kind of go, and then they kind of go, they're like snarky, and they're like only looking for whatever the fuck they want. And they're being controlled by the main computer the whole time.
Right.
Like, come back, right? But not when they confront somebody who says no. That was the problem, is all the people in Zion were like, put up the walls and fucking just
fight, shoot them, yeah.
Shoot them,
engage,
and da-da-da. And all those people, fucking, right? Instead of where Neo wasn't in the Matrix anymore and was in real life and doing the same things that he does in the Matrix. There's no difference. There's no difference. The idea that was like a crazy thing, or he's the one, like, we all have that power to be what we are in our eternal truth of that 8-dimensional place we go to restore and bring back here. But now people aren't realizing that
if you don't use your rights, you lose your rights.
Right. That if you're afraid of ghosts, I'm sorry, the Ghostbusters and those kind of ghosts, and, you know, I'm sorry to say, like, those ghosts are probably like fucking, like, we're out of here. Like, these weird things are fucking good. The ghosts are scared of the new ghosts.
Yeah.
And these ones are sneakier. And these ones, if you remember in the Matrix, they turn, when you start to see the cities that evolve over the movies, they fucking start turning into fucking weirder and weirder and bigger and different fucking stuff. And the cords that are attached, which is a false sense of the idea to me of like DNA that in sentinel beings, right? Like, the thing is it's okay in natural order where if it's one sperm that gets in, right? And all the others just kind of fall off and there's the insemination of the egg. I feel like there's something about the sentinels and like how they have like this false DNA AI strand, and they have this weird like radio frequency that's only tapped into this control unit. Like, as a human, we have no control. We're just kind of like it's up to God if the fucking sperm gets in and if you're going to get pregnant, or you look at the testosterone levels that we've been talking about as those are low, but everybody's been jacked up right now and got raped. Literally. And the scary part is just the way that the man or the woman is always ovulating and creating a new egg, and the man continues to create new sperm.
That's the sacral. That's the regenerative.
The sacral. That the false sacral in the first episode that we talked about that you describe, I feel like we have just
full circle moments.
Full circle, but really seen how much more intense it is than just creating. And there is a hypersexualization that comes out of what's been going on with this false sacral.
Yeah, there's a real pressure there.
When you look at Instagram and you look at how they travel and the models and all that kind of stuff, right? This like super hypersexualization. Well, I needed to get it so I could travel, so I could take pictures, so I can keep my fucking life going that way. And it's all based off the most sexual. All I do is see on TikTok or anything, just like, hey,
women, men.
Yeah.
And it seems like younger and younger generations too, getting involved in that kind of culture.
Yeah.
Of just like showcasing the body and just like, you know, thirst trapping, I guess, in new and more, you know, sophisticated ways.
This is like thirst gulping.
Yeah.
From, unfortunately, hijacking a beautiful fucking whale and Moby Dicking this whole thing. And I know it's kind of a weird way to end the show, but
Moby Dick in it.
I just got to be transparent because I feel like we are at the fucking moment of all moments that we should all be so fucking aware of. We were all saying in here, there was a bunch of us that were here before the show, and we were all saying, this is the moment where you just give it everything to people to be aware.
Mm-hmm.
And I just got to thank you for just fucking being just such a fucking huge life force in my life to do this with, because I fucking couldn't do it with anybody else. Like you bring them, like having you gone last week was fucking like, man, I felt you still there, but it was like, there's no way I could do this alone. You bring so much. You've changed my life in realizing how much, seeing Fauci's chart was hard for me, right? Because it was one of those things where it's like, fuck, I could easily be put into being an implant if I didn't fucking make this place and really realize that I needed others to bring in their beautiful knowledge and take over with the energy and let go and do that. And we did that in 2019, but I'm emotional because it's beautiful.
We're doing it.
I know.
There's
but
no other way.
It means a lot.
I know, brother. Me too. I mean, look at us. Look at us now.
So, yeah.
And everyone that's involved in this show, everyone.
I know.
We are essentially forming a group shield, because the more of us that align into our truth, into our frequency, because we've been able to activate ourselves and trust ourselves and love ourselves, we are a shield. We are the immune system. And thank you for opening the portal for all this to be here.
No, I know. I mean, that's all. That's really what just my job is. Like, as a transpersonal being, is to just. I'm not here to know myself.
Here to clean up the karma.
I know. And this show's changed my life, as it's changing the life of others, but personally, on such a deep, profound level. Not because of the info, maybe as much as more of in myself, of realizing how much human design changed my life. And realizing, my whole life I've never really had to know myself. I already knew it. Mm-hmm. I'm just really here to, all right,
do the damn thing.
I'm here to do it. I kind of have a weird thing where I'm realizing being a left angle is just such a it's a hard place. Mm-hmm. But it's the most beautiful place when you find the people that don't burn you down and want to show up and fucking show the fucking badass shit. And I just appreciate it so much. And I feel that I appreciate you sharing your personal story at the end here, because the satisfaction to me was that how much magic just happened in that last 10 minutes to show people there was a message that you were trying to convey today in so many ways in me. And I feel like we both were able to do that in such a because it's pretty crazy where we just went. I've never even heard anybody even go there. This is not regurgitated info.
No, this is direct personal experience on a very deep level.
And I think that's where some of this is derived from, is right now that prototype false AI energy is coming from, and I'm not trying to point people out or trying to put people down, but there's just a lot of regurgitating people who are just they read the book from somebody that said something years ago, and then it's they feel like there's this big spiritual empowerment without realizing you have to come from what you've got and gathered, but you have to go from your response, your unique code here to bring your unique code. And if it's not unique, then it's that's how you know it's an implant. Mm-hmm. Now. Mm-hmm.
And even the most seeming spiritual things can be implants. And that's something I think that our community really needs to watch out for, is that there are very convincing spiritual charlatans out there that are actually like hubs of implanting operations, of astral tagging operations, of false light deception.
And they don't know.
operations.
That's the thing. They're not.
Yeah, I'm not.
Yeah, they're not bad people. They just have been taken over.
Yeah, and so it's just really remembering that discernment of, you know, as anyone's human design would tell them, regardless of type, it all comes from within. The mind is, like we said in the beginning, it's so open. It's so easily dazzled by that shiny new seeming solution, or that spiritual activation that's meant to just finally recode you into your perfection. It's like, no, it's never going to come from the outside. Yes, there's guides. Yes, there's helpers. Yes, there's ancestors. But your heart's truth is the only truth that's going to open up the portal for the new, better world to be born, and to keep you safe long enough for that to be able to be possible. Because I feel that the next 5 years, Kali's coming to town.
I know.
And our job is to survive. And the way to survive is not to have necessarily a survival mindset of fear and scarcity and where do I go? It's about
programmed that's been out there that goes against your satisfaction, frustration,
Right.
and it's frustrating, or your ability to feel success, or it's just making you feel bitter,
right,
as a projector.
or like, how dare you go for the things you want in a time where so much is at stake? It's like actually going for what you want, going for what brings you satisfaction, going for what puts you on that next level. Like what you were saying with Jupiter, like into the celestial you. That's your greatest protection. That connection
Right.
with your highest self is what's going to effortlessly move you through one of humanity's most tested time
terrestrial abomination. I'm seeing like it reminds me of like the earth, and it's just going to be so haywire, but because your connection to the ethereal, which is through the celestial, which then you're connecting to those higher realms and taking it there, is a fucking anchor system, a divine. The only cord there is through the divine cord.
Mm-hmm, exactly.
And it's not a cord that keeps you away from your love or keeps you away from the things that make you feel good at all. It's quite the opposite. It's a cord that's feeding you love. It's not, telling you what to do, right? It's not telling you how to be. It's telling you to be. It's telling you to love your code and be it. It's not going to be wavered or be stuck in a vertigo like state because
of
it's
panic and stress and fear. And can I share the screen for like the final frame? Because this is like a picture that I found a while ago. This is from my old Instagram that I can't get into. And I feel like it's the defining picture of like this next 10 years is like the upheaval is going to be at an all-time high. And we have to be this person right here. In the midst of the destruction, our connection to our inner sourced beingness, our, because it's like we go in and from the in we go up,
Yeah.
And so having that alignment within ourselves allows us to hold the field in the face of this upheaval. Because we are the beacons, we are the raves before the raves get here. We are the ones holding the line to keep this story going, to keep ourselves from being exterminated again, or attempted to be exterminated again. And it's through this essence. It's not Mad Max. There might be moments like that, but it's more about this. It's more about when we're at peace, we actually hold the most frequency. When we hold the most frequency in our hearts, that's when we are Neo. That's when we can put the hand up and everything in the universe stops to honor that divine law. But if there's any shred of fear, if there's any shred of hesitation within you, your upholding of that law is open to being fucked with a little bit. But if you hold the truth of your divine rights as a being in your heart, in your frequency, and so it is. Your divine rights are upheld. And that's what people need to see in the world. That's the role modeling we need to be doing as so-called spiritual beings. If we're not doing that, then we are just basically in the group of watching Game of Thrones or whatever.
And then if you could just turn to my screen, because I thought that's so beautiful, is we don't want to go to this, because if you understand, and this is actually
That's
really...
Phantom Earth.
That's Phantom Earth, and the Matrix understanding is that they torched the skies because what happened was that the computers did take over, and so they thought, we're going to torch the skies, even though, like, think of right now, we're going to save this world through solar energy and solar power, right? Through all these little things. Like, I was looking at your volcano, and I'm like, how's that going to work with the solar panels?
Right.
How's that going to work with these things, right? And it's almost like so weird that they're trying to say that technology is going to save us, yet it was the technology that took us down. And it was people who followed it all and then came up with crazy ideas that are not natural. Like, let's fucking, like Bill Gates, right? Like, let's just fucking block the sun. Let's do, right? Like, all these crazy things are going to be way crazier than we could even believe. And we do not want to be sitting there while all of our brothers and sisters end up in pods, or however you want to look at it, feeding another system. That's the extermination. It's not the idea that they program us through dinosaurs, right? Like, oh, an asteroid came and fucking destroyed the fucking earth for the moment and just wiped the dinosaurs out. Like, people think that's extermination. It's just like the end of it all, a nuclear bomb, a da-da-da-da-da. But extermination is the harvesting, and the way that this weird universe works is it takes energy from another energy.
Mm-hmm.
The idea of wiping something out just to wipe it out, even the dark wants something out of it.
Mm-hmm. Because we are the ones with the power.
Exactly.
And that's what you have to see in the reflection of all of these measures taken on such a grand scale. To do what? To get your power that you have, that you're probably not using to its fullest capacity.
Yeah. And
that's probably stories for another day on
is.
Accessing power at the next level.
It is. Well, thanks for opening my solar plexus tonight, and just being back. And I know it's not easy. When I lost my grandma in 2020, it was hard. And, you know, just you being here, I know it's a lot, but to do the beautiful work you do is just so beautiful to have you here. And, you know, I know so many people are just holding space for you, and I hope you know I'm holding the biggest space I can for you fully.
Thank you.
You know?
Yeah. My grandma would want me to be here doing the damn thing. So
right.
I feel that fully. And I love you. I love all you guys. Thank you so much.
Know. Yeah, tonight was revolutionary in many ways. I just feel like we just fucking went.
I know. We're stepping up into the next.
Yeah.
You'll see.
You'll see. Love you all very much. Make sure that you join us. We're here on Wednesday nights. We are starting to deal with live stream bannings and shit on Instagram. So make sure that if you, make sure that you subscribe here, and make sure that you join us on High Vibe in case that's where it ends up at the end of the day. Appreciate you all very much. We'll see you on the next one.